Hi, Misha here, and this is going to be a before and after video, yet again involving the Taiwanese T91. And it's really going to be about the lower, but we'll talk about some other accessories while we're hanging out, talking about, honestly, one of my favorite guns, and a project that has been kind of in the works for me for over 3 years. The good news is I did record a before video. The bad news is I looked at the date. It was recorded, or at least transferred onto my hard drive on January 18th, 2019. So 3 years ago, almost to the day. So it will be with the old camera, but only for a bit. So we're going to talk about these lower receivers. Finally, I have one finished out. So let's cut back to how it looked when it came into the country, imported by T91 Tactical from the factory over in Taiwan that makes the military guns. Pretty cool. And then we'll come back here. So this is the before of the 80% receiver. See, it's here, it's unfinished, but it does have the Taiwanese markings already from factory 203, as well as the selector markings. The front is already finished out. Our mag well is good to go. Mag catch, it's good to go. We even have the slot and hole for the bolt catch and the front pivot pin. Even the little hole here is drilled out. In the back, this is all finished, threaded. There's a hole for the retainer, the hole for the rear detents there, as well as the takedown. The trigger guard's even ready to go. Got the hole here and the hole back here for the roll pin. The hole for the pistol grip screw is threaded. So what's left? Well, you see we have this block right in the middle third. This would be where the trigger group would go. It's solid, that'll need to be scooped out. Down here. So the trigger slot will need to be cut. Then holes drilled for the hammer and trigger pin. A hole for the safety. And then a hole on the bottom is actually here for the safety, but I don't know how deep that goes. I'm sure it'll need to be finished out because the hole's not there. So you'll need to finish out the hole for the detent and spring. And that is it. Now normally I don't mess with 80%ers, but the opportunity to get a true Taiwanese T91 lower, even an incomplete forging, was just too much. Alrighty, well, we'll get away from this before and get back to the after, where we have a complete gun. Stop there. And now here we are, finished out. As recommended by T91 Tactical, the best finish to use that they're doing to match the uppers is gun coat SOCOM black. Well, we didn't have SOCOM black, but we had pretty close to it, so we went with that. And to be honest, the first time we applied the gun coat, it didn't take because the finish was pretty shiny. So we were trying to avoid bead blasting at all to preserve markings because they're not super deep. But in the end, we had to just do a very little bit of blasting, especially for areas where it was particularly shiny, like here in the front, and of course where the trigger group was machined out. And then reapplied, and it took fine. Ultimately, probably will end up doing a Cerakote down the road, or anodizing. Keep in mind this is alloy, so you know your options are that. But as you saw from the 80%, not a whole lot needed to be done, just kind of in the trigger area here. And this is essentially an A1 receiver. Here's the one you saw us shooting earlier this year. But of course, the devil's in the details, and it's nice to have the correct markings. Also, this one has the standard selector stops for a 3-way selector, and of course the T91 has a 4-way selector, so no stops. Of course, and this is fire down here. This would be safe. Up is safe as well, and forward is safe too. So, it is pure cosmetic. And we did use, of course, the T91 lower parts kit, grip, all the other stuff here. Speaking of the one we fired earlier, let's cut back to the first shots we ran through it, and then put it together and talk about the T91 uppers from T91 Tactical, and just some fun little facts about this Taiwanese rifle system. First shots out of the T91 Tactical. T91, not bad. And here we are as a complete gun with the lower. And this is really as correct as you're going to get it, and keep it a semi-auto ATF approved legal gun. Now, the lower was 80%, originally created by 205 Factory, or 205 Arsenal, in the People's Republic of China, Taiwan. Of course, since it was imported as an 80%, it was a non-receiver, a blank, a forging, so no serial number. Now, since this was for me, don't really have a need to put a serial on it. If I were to sell it, though, I would stamp a serial into it. But this is mine because this is really one of my favorite guns. And it's taken many years to kind of get to this point. Starting off with the Wolf A1 uppers and just kind of getting better and better as time goes on. This is, like I said, about as accurate as I can make it. We've got a 14.5-inch barrel with the original muzzle brake flash hider, or muzzle brake compensator. We've got the original block style with the right front sling swivel and the short pick rail here, the bayonet lug. This has, of course, the carbine length gas system, and this is the modern Taiwanese handguard that is M-LOK compatible. We also have the simple rear sight, as they call it. There's also the carry handle you can use. We have the 3-position Car 15 style stock. The stock is polymer, the latch is actually metal, and it does have a different style of nut, different type of pistol grip with storage compartment. I've actually got a small cleaning kit in there at the moment. The selector we already talked about, pretty standard AR trigger guard, and T91 a few years ago even brought in a few 30 round magazines. These are not great mags, but it's kind of nice to have them just for completeness' sake. So yeah, let's I don't know, hang out and talk about this a bit, because after 3 years it's really very nice to have this done. Now in the past I have shown you another 80% lower, but that was finished out by T91 themselves. This one's mine, and yeah, it's just kind of nice to have stuff finally done. You know what I mean? So here both are together, the finished out lower and the T91 Tactical T91 upper. This is the standard quote-unquote rifle length with a barrel. If you include the compensator / flash hider combination, notice it's pinned on there, it's right at 16 inches, just right there at it. Without it, it's a pretty long device here. You're dropping it down to about 14.5 inches. The overall length is about 34.5 inches, a little bit longer. That's with the stock out. This is 3 positions. Sorry. All the way in, we're just about 31 inches, maybe just a smidgen more. So, relatively compact, all things considered. We're also relatively lightweight, right about 7 pounds. Not too bad for a modern gun. Like I said, this has the modern handguard system. It will still take the more traditional polymer handguard. It is M-LOK compatible. Typically it's issued with a forward grip and then whatever devices you might need. The front sight is fixed on. On the rear here we have, of course, a standard 1913 rail. We do actually have a little brass deflector, but it's not much of one. No forward assist. A1 port door. Pretty much a standard A1 lower, except for the alterations for the 4-way selector. Here's our mags. And again, we have a short pick rail under the gas block. This was really added before this modern handguard. And we have more or less standard NATO bayonet lug. And even have a Taiwanese military bayonet here, courtesy of T91 Tactical. It's quite interesting. And here it is mounted on the gun. It's standard. Again, right at the edge of the muzzle device, as you expect. And it's very much based on the M7 style, but it's a little bit longer and thinner. In fact, here's one, just for comparison. A little bit longer. And I would imagine part of that is simply because the M7 was initially created for the M16A1 with its 20-inch barrel, whereas this is working with a barrel about 5 inches shorter. So wouldn't hurt to have a slightly longer bayonet. Again, pretty similar and same system. Just to show you there. Of course, the scabbard has to be a little longer to accommodate it as well. Now, I've said in previous videos that I really think this is one of the best piston-driven AR-type guns around, and all things considered, the big picture, I would pick it over an HK 416, at least over an HK MR 556 in all of its weight. But why is that? Well, it has a lot to do with history, which is always neat, but also just a proven track record. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and then show a few more kind of interesting features. Why not? After all, it's taken me 3 years to finish this up, so I'm going to make the most of it. Hope you join me. This general system has been in service for nearly half a century, and with a roughly 500,000 guns created. Now, last year we were fortunate enough to show you the T65 and the T65K2. Now that was a loaner from T91 Tactical that they're hoping one day to get in production if they can get all the parts together. Here is a shooting clip just to remind you what it looks like though.
Okay, what you got there?
We're going to try it with the Magpul mag out of the K2. Am I good?
Left just a little bit, down just a little bit. All right, that's good.
All right, so the first time really could have been a mag issue or a break-in issue since this is newly assembled. We'll keep trying. Now the K2 was introduced in 1987, and it was the 1-in-7 twist version to fire the then becoming standard SS109 M855 62 grain bullet. But the system actually goes all the way back to the 1960s in some ways. Now, initially, the 205 Arsenal or 205 Armory produced a licensed copy of the M14 known as the Type 57. Actually, they obtained the tooling from Springfield Armory right before it shut down, the original Springfield. But in 1968, obviously with Vietnam being rather close by, they saw this new fangled 223 round and were very interested. Well, they played around with what to do. There weren't a lot of options around at the time, but a couple, of course, were the AR-15 M16A1, also the Armalite AR-18, as well as the HK-33 and the FNCAL. By 1973, they kind of had a good idea what they wanted to do, and they combined the M16 with the AR-18. And the first prototype was shown off in 1975, and then it was pretty much finalized in 1976, becoming the T65, the original one. And they would build these in through the 70s and early 80s. Now, there would be an improved version that had a little bit better heat shield than the handguard and a few other minor updates, but these were all 1-in-12 twist guns. They at this time had a 3-way selector. They measured just under 39 inches long with a fixed stock and a 20-inch barrel, and they had a carry handle. Again, yeah. Now those didn't have a carry handle, but they had a fixed rear sight. My apologies. The T65K2, introduced in the 80s, did have the carry handle though, and it had the updated twist rate, and it was the first to introduce a 4-way selector. Safe, semi-automatic, burst, full auto. I guess they saw the M16A2 and thought, burst isn't a bad idea, but yeah. To be fair to Colt, they had a 4-way selector available all the way back in the 1960s. The U.S. military simply didn't purchase. So this was the standard gun, the T65 and T65K2, throughout the 20th century. And they did have some export customers, including those in South America, even some in Africa, and of course other East Asian countries. But they weren't interested in a carbine version like the CAR-15. The earliest one would have been the T65K3, which really never left the prototype or limited production stage. In 1992, they kind of started a radical program to make a full replacement, but after some initial success, they decided to scale that back around 96, kind of returning to the K3 carbine notion. And so the earliest prototypes were around of an updated version in 1997, and in 1998 it was finalized. This would be what we know as the T86. It still had a fixed carry handle, but it had easy provisions to attach optics. It introduced a more bulged out brass deflector and introduced a new gas piston system that was easier to clean, more modular, and it continued the four-way selector. Now the T86 was a true carbine. It had a barrel including the compensator measuring about 375 millimeters, so about 14.8 inches. Relatively short, so around 13 inches, give or take, of actual rifled barrel. And they were planning on going into full production and adoption, and in fact the Taiwanese military tried it out, and the Navy, special teams and everything, did purchase some. But they only built under 5,000, with production lasting from 1999 to about 2001, 2002. A few were exported as well to Jordan and Kuwait, possibly the UAE, but these were very small numbers because, again, there was kind of a budget cut in Taiwan and the defense spending. But this wouldn't last, and of course this would get us the T91 here. Here's one of the mags made for this. It is its own mag, has these little over insertion stops, and it's also cut out to both fit AR-18 pattern catches and AR-15 pattern. It's kind of made of a lightweight, very shiny alloy. Again, it's a lightweight mag, but not exactly the best, but it's neat to have. Yeah, the next step, they would start working on around 2000, 2001, the first prototype, and it was kind of type patterned in 2002, making it the T91, again after the traditional calendar year. It was very much based on the T86, but with a few important updates. For one, because it was the 21st century now, they did away with the fixed carry handle, going to a 1913 rail. They carried over the improved gas system and the four-way selector, still having a 1-in-7 twist, chrome line bore, but they did extend the barrel out, like I said, to about 406, 407 millimeters, including this new pattern of compensator that also acts as a flash hider, again, right at 16 inches, so a little bit longer. This means that the T86 is about an inch shorter overall. And a few other changes besides. Those are the big ones. So this was type classified, and it was adopted by the Taiwanese Army, who initially placed an order for just over 101,000, with deliveries scheduled between 2004 and 2008. So the production of this started full scale in 2003, and frankly has been going on ever since. There's also what they call the CQB version, which is more of the traditional carbine. It has a barrel that's just under 350 millimeters, so including the muzzle device, a little over 13.5 inches. Obviously it's commensurately a little bit shorter, about 31 inches with stock out and 28 inches with stock in. Weight's a little bit lighter, maybe 6.8, 6.9 pounds. But they have kept the weight down, and part of it is they've kept the A1 lower and a very trim upper. Again, pretty lightweight, simplistic Car 15 stock, but it works for them. And what have you. So, what makes this kind of different and special? Well, we've talked about it before. And like I said, it has proven to be quite a reliable gun. So, here's another range clip from last year.
All right, we're up.
Try the T91 with the other mag. I'm going to say that's a mag issue.
Mag, I'm going to go with the mag on that one.
I think so. That was a full 30.
Yeah, that worked fine.
Yeah.
Bad mag.
Yep. So this is a short stroke gas piston system combined with very much an AR-15 style bolt group. When it started off as the T65, the system was very similar to the AR-18, but over the years, especially with the update of the T86, they've really improved the system for dependability and ease of disassembly. Just rotate this, pull it out. This is your entire gas piston system in one packet, spring included. And to take it further apart, you just basically twist. Couldn't be easier. The handguard also comes off with just one pin, and your bolt comes out the back as on pretty much any other AR-15 type. Now the lug, the bolt head and the lugs will look very, very similar, but actually dimensionally they're just enough that they're not interchangeable. Plus the bolt itself is a little shorter. And of course the gas key is different because it has to interface with the end of the short stroke piston, which will come back and tap it slightly. Notice there are no serrations for a forward assist. It also is tapered in the back a bit to aid in cycling, being a piston driven system. But otherwise, very similar. Same type of handle as well. Again, it's a A1 style upper, but with a pick row. Kind of reminds me of a Canadian. And our lower, very much A1 style. Little different cut, but here's our hammer inside here. And same mag catch and this. So a lot of the piston ARs today are very newcomers, some from the 90s. For example, the HK416 uses the gas piston system pretty much lifted directly from the G36. But a lot of the ARs in America are even newer from the 21st century. This one has gone through several iterations and improvements. T65 to T65K2 to T86 to T91. And it has been proven in combat. Taiwan themselves, well, they've used at least nearly 250,000 T91s on top of several 100,000 T65s, T65K2s, and a few thousand T86s. Jordan and Kuwait have also been pretty regular export customers, and several others besides. So it has seen combat, including in places like Iraq. And of course, this is what Taiwanese soldiers, Chinese Republic soldiers, use to defend their country against possible invasion by communist China. In fact, the whole idea behind the T91 was to make something better than their guns, including the Type 81 and the QBZ 95 bullpup. One more thing before we go back together. I wanted to show you the markings on the underside of the T91 tactical upper. We've got a couple of Chinese proofs, as well as a unique serial number, because over in Taiwan, the upper is considered the receiver. But of course in the USA, when it comes to AR-15 types, we consider the lower the receiver, which is actually pretty weird if you think about it. AR-180s, the upper is the receiver. SIG 55X guns, the upper is the receiver. In fact, there's a little bit of a special dispensation to make the lower the receiver when it comes to AR-15s, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, just want to show you that. So why did I go with a T91 tactical upper? Barrel markings. And all the trouble of machining out an 80% lower when, frankly, my Wolf A1 16-inch with an A1 Brownells or Nodak lower was perfectly good and pretty darn close. Frankly, it was just a lot of fun. The Wolf A1 upper, at least one of the earlier ones I picked up from Atlantic, first started off with a 16-inch barrel, but it had what we call the T91S profile, meaning it was heavier. It also had a T86 style two-piece gas block front sight unit. Well, the next thing I did is I realized that the military guns weren't typically 16 inches. Now, there have been some used by the Navy, also maybe the military police, who also, for that matter, purchased their own for ordering the first 12,000 T91s back in 2005. I wanted to have the military gun, and I liked the idea that the 14.5-inch Wolf A1 upper was lighter. So all I had to do was pin and weld the muzzle device on. But then I wanted to have the correct T91 gas block front sight because it gives you the right front sling swivel, bayonet lug, and the small pick rail. Well, see, that had to be specially made because the Wolf barrel, even the 14.5-incher, was still thicker at the gas block area. It tapered down out here, but to be consistent with the 16-inch and the 12-inch, they all had the same diameter gas block. So that kind of just went down a whole rabbit hole, which I kind of documented over several videos. But then T91 started doing their uppers, and frankly, they're just more authentic. You get kind of the neat marked upper here we looked at, either this style handguard or the traditional, and you get a nice barrel blank brought over from Taiwan and finished out here to comply with laws. And they do these in pretty limited runs, which is neat. And they still have the 80% lowers, at least on and off, but as far as I know, they haven't started selling them complete yet. So 80% only. Same with the lower parts kit, stock, all that. By the way, put an HK mag in it, replacing the factory one. Just to show no hard feelings between this and the HK series. Also, just to mention, when we were out shooting last year, the only malfunction we had was because of a bad mag. That's the good and the bad of Stanag. But as long as we had a good mag and the T91 gun, it worked just fine. And yeah, this is kind of about as good as I can do it here, as far as being authentic parts.
We're rolling.
T65K2 with the mag we know works. And she held open. So yeah, I'm going to say that first failure was due to mag. Here is one other. The Sling. I'll give it this. It's a heavy-duty sling. It's got a fully rotating big old clip on the end. All metal. It's got a buckle here. And another buckle on the other end. Somewhere in all this. Slider here for this. The problem is, this is a very long sling, even fully cinched up, and it is very heavy. Again, durable. The thing weighs a pound in and of itself, so that's why it's not on the gun right now. But no, it has been a fun experience, and part of it was these are relatively inexpensive. The Wolf uppers Again, no rear sight, standard handguard, or, $500 give or take. The T91 assembly with this handguard, I think, was $900 retail. So more, but compared to many other Piston uppers, not bad at all. And the lowers, I forget, frankly, 100, 150, but they do have the markings, and the finishing out's pretty straightforward. And then, of course, you can put whatever AR buttstock you want on it, and use whatever AR lower and grip you want. It's kind of up to you. But yeah, Taiwan has fielded quite a few of these. Still their standard gun, along with the 12-inch version. Jordan, Kuwait, UAE, they've all purchased them. Kuwait, I think, has about 20,000, and Jordan's about the same. One interesting user is Haiti, who purchased 100, I guess a sample, and India purchased 1,000. The UAE purchased 10,000. So they have spread out some, and there have been repeat orders. I think part of it is, yeah, it's battle tested. Part of it is it's a lot less expensive than the HK and uses more standard AR-15 parts. So there must be something to it. And they're developing newer versions, the T91 K3, for example, and adopting more accessories and what have you, including, of course, optical sights. But no, this has been a lot of fun as a project. And it has been fun to kind of accessorize it. I've got 3 mags in a pouch here just because. Bayonet here. And the sling. And so, since it's finally over this January, thought I would share it with you. I'm sure it'll come out to the range. It's a really soft, fun shooter. And if something breaks, mostly it's just AR-15. Even if it's not, for right now, T91 carries spare components, so you can get them from there, and they're not crazy money. I do trust them to actually have the true factory 205 stuff. There's a lot of airsoft T91 components floating around, so just, be mindful of those. But also keep in mind, this is not HK. It is good quality, but if you go to assemble, you might have some fitment issues. What I've noticed, if I start using these, say with Colt parts, the Taiwanese parts tend to be on the larger end of U.S. military specification. So usually compatible, but either fit tight or need minor adjusting to fit. Just my own personal experience. But I have done, half a dozen, maybe 8 of these. So just what I thought I would tell you. So what do you think? I love the military history. I love that it's not an AR, but it is an AR. And I would super love it if T91 Tactical would be able to do the T65 K2 that we were very fortunate to borrow last year. And later on this year, we'll talk about the original T65 because those parts kits from HK Parts, they're still knocking about. I have finally got all the components, and hopefully in 2022, I'll get the time to finish those out as well. So, yeah, best wishes. And for more, you can check out previous videos. But I do like to update this one every few months, just because the simple roof sight's pretty cool. Got these little spring-loaded things. It's not a target sight, but it's a good backup sight. You actually use your cleaning rod ends to take it on and off. There's just a lot of fun little features about these and little thoughtful things like how the gas system disassembly is put together. If you've done one of these, a project, especially if you finished out at a lower, I'd love to hear how it went for you. This one went pretty smoothly, except having to lightly bead blast the lower to make the Duracoat stick. Eventually, like I said, might do Cerakoting or even anodizing, but for now, this is good enough. Trigger is very military trigger. And once more, the 4-way selector is simply for cosmetics. It is 100% semi-automatic. As always, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please do check out the link to the Patreon page. In fact, we've got a Q&A coming up soon, so if you'd like to submit any questions, toss them in there. With that, this is Misha, and I'll catch you very soon next time.